psychopathic preacher attempts to lay hands on a small fortune left to the kids of his former cellmate by threatening them and manipulating their emotionally vulnerable mother in the 1955 thriller The Night of the Hunter, starring Robert Mitchum and Lillian Gish. That's the film we're digging into today on Movie Bones. Theme song, telling you something wicked this way comes. Theme song. When you hear this, you'll know it's time to run. Now, there's something you want to sing to your kids at night, am I right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right after they watch this film, then you're going to sing it to them, right? To give them good dreams at night.
Exactly.
Okay. So this week's film, guys, is called The Night of the Hunter. It's directed by Charles Laughton. It centers on a preacher and psychopath named Harry Powell, who, I kid you not, has the words love and hate tattooed on each hand, one letter per knuckle. He's briefly incarcerated for stealing someone's car, and while he's in prison, he overhears his condemned cellmate, played by Peter Graves, talking in his sleep, in a kind of most unnaturally clear way for a sleep talker, but whatever. He ends up hearing about some money that he's given to his kids on the outside. So once Mr. Love-Hate-Fist gets out, he finds the man's family and begins to prey upon, no pun intended, his now widow and kids in an effort to lay hands on the loot. Which, by the way, the girl has hidden in her doll, which makes this the second film we've seen, Ryan, with that plot element going back to, Wait Until Dark. But that's the setup, and right off the bat, Ryan, I want to get to the best part of the film for me, and that's Robert Mitchum's Harry Powell. Because he brings some real genuine menace to the family he's hunting. And for me, that was the best part. The way he plays the whole left-hand, right-hand thing, the way he twists scripture to apply the locals to his side, and an almost all too similar pattern some preachers today go around, throwing scripture around in very superficially appealing ways without challenging anyone's personal behavior, and usually for their own enrichment or personal goals. And that, for me, had some real good resonance. There's also some stuff with the widow because of her. She is a very abused woman, and it makes me think that she's kind of got some baggage with the guy, her husband, who was he was put to death for the crimes he committed. But so I thought that was very kind of spot on. Unfortunately, that's not the only thing the film does. But what do you think, man? What's your take on this?
What this movie did, which I don't know if I'd say drew me in right off the bat, but I was not so suspecting for Robert Mitchum's character, Harry, to be so evil right out the gate. And that really got to me. Like, and I will say, for me, it was in, a good way. Because, when he goes to jail, he doesn't get arrested for the crimes that he has committed. And he tells you right off the bat the crimes that he's committed. He preys on widows.
Yeah.
He comes to his town. He's a silver-tongued devil. And he's able to use the Bible, like you've already said. He's able to use the word, the scriptures, to twist it to his, what he wants. He seems like he honestly believes he's doing some kind of will of God, which also, it kind of adds to the creepiness of his character.
Yeah.
And like I said, he goes into town, he takes out widows, and then he moves right along to the next whatever it is he's doing. In this, we know that he's trying to find this money that his cellie had hidden and everything. And even then, he says, "Well, this is what I'm going to do." And for 50s movies, this is pretty graphic in its own way. But I haven't seen a movie yet that has gone as far to show what this movie has shown. Mm-hmm. Specifically, that one water scene.
Oh, yeah. I know that was really creepy, and it's
yeah.
And I couldn't help but thinking, like, there's the actress. She's got to be holding her breath that whole time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's gruesome. It's very gruesome.
If you look at the posters, you would not know this. And again, this is an era of that and everything. This movie is a story about this evil man and these kids. And again, you wouldn't really know that looking at the poster of the movie, because I went and looked it up because I was making sure. It's essentially a chase. He tortures them. About when he tortures them, he psychologically tortures them. But what this movie is it is a psychological thriller between this evil man and the older boy of the movie, the son of his cellmate.
Yeah. And I would agree with you that this is primarily a psychological thriller. For me, I think there's a bit of a problem. I mean, I agree with everything you just said. Those parts are the best parts of the film. And I will confess to the audience, although this is a show that does pride itself on having at least one person having not seen it before. In this case, that's still true because Ryan hasn't seen it before. This is my second time watching it. And the first time I watched it, it was very much like what you described. I had, my impression of the film was that all those elements stood out and shone very brightly for me. Having watched it the second time, I can see there's another movie going on. And this one kind of bookends, it bookends the psychological drama around pure allegory. And that's where it started to run into trouble because it doesn't really blend those two things. I don't know if those two things are just really hard to blend. I'm kind of skeptical that it can be done really well. I'm not completely off to the idea that it could be. But when it comes back around again, especially late in the film, the allegorical parts kind of start to flatten things out for the characters in the community and everyone else in the film that happens to have a presence at all. Everything starts to get flattened. That's part of the problem I saw in the second time. To your points, Ryan, yeah, they're all good things. The psychological elements, the chase, the stuff with the kids. Although I will say the daughter drove me nuts. You can try and fool a child, and often you can fool a child. But when you hurt a child and you're still new in their life, it's like that should do something different. That they should not be coming back to you, especially when you're still fairly new. I mean, we never quite see what Harry Powell does to earn her trust very much, but she seems very devoted to him. I would almost be tempted to write that off if it wasn't for the fact that there are other characters, and they're all women characters, all female characters, that also just kind of swoon for the guy. Now, there's no male character that I can think of in the movie that just kind of falls head over heels that like, oh, he's such a good guy, or that like Mrs. Spoon, and we'll get to her later. But there's another girl there. She's a little older. She's almost to that verge of adulthood, and she still has to be told, that this man who is clearly creepo, he is creepo to her too. It's like, she's got this siren song spell cast over her. And it's happened a number of times. And I can at least 3 times by my count. So you see something happen that many times over. It's like, there's something like going on with the director's mind that doesn't seem too healthy. If you just had one instance of it, it wouldn't feel like it could feel like it was just a character. But when you see a pattern like that, it was like all the women are somehow more susceptible to evil that this guy has to offer. And it seemed to be too one way that way.
I kind of get where you're coming from, but I think we have 2 wildly different takes on the movie. Mm-hmm. That I don't know if in this instance we'll be able to reach that middle ground because of that.
Yeah.
And everything. Because I do get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But so this is kind of, okay, so this is the part where I will throw in, usually when a story actually focuses, like, does a primary job, or its primary job is to focus on a kid in this larger than life setting and everything, especially with what they did. Like, I kept thinking, this is a fairy tale. I know that might sound strange, but I was like, this is a fairy tale. To me, this is a fairy tale. Or you could put these supernatural archetypes on these people. You have the 2 kids who've lost their parents, and then on top of that, you pretty much have the devil chasing them. Yes. All around until they find the angel who can protect them from the devil and everything. And the devil is just so creepily done.
Yes.
But like fairy tales, usually when you think fairy tale, unless you're thinking of Grimm, like the Grimm fairy tale, but most of the time we think fairy tale, it's like, fantastical, positive, upbeat, So I'm going to throw the word macabre on the front of it. It's a macabre fairy tale. It's pushed by violence. It's pushed by this horror element. And like I said, it's so perfectly done in my opinion. And I say it because like there's this one night where John says, "Hey, we're going to stop here." And so they get in, they get out, they go to this farm or this barn, and they're about to like rest. They're hidden away. They're about to rest. But what do they hear? They hear the song.
That song.
They hear the same song that this guy sings wherever he goes. And he's not like he's on a horse, but he's just like going along,
Yeah.
He's going to get there when he gets there kind of attitude.
Yes.
And for me, I was like, that's kind of creepy and everything. And there was one point I thought, maybe this movie is just going to let the bad guy get away with it.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
I thought for a second, I was like, because, and I'll say that it's because of what they've already been willing to show us in the movie. I thought, well, maybe he's just going to get away with it. But no, it's, it introduces this other character.
Yeah.
Well, I actually liked her character as well. I really wish she was more in the film. I want to make that clear. But again, this is a movie based off a book, so you're not getting the whole entire book. And it also had a stage adaptation of it. So it made me sit there and go, well, I kind of want to see, I want to be a little bit more in depth.
A lot of what you're saying still resonates with me. That's the funny thing is like a lot of this stuff still resonates with me. I think I have a different opinion on the old woman who's she brings kids in, but in order to service the kind of the fairy tale aspects that you pointed out, which is a certain artful way, like you said, the film does it in a certain artful way, and some places that feel very resonant, and there are other parts that when applied to when applied to the woman, because in a lot of fairy tales the world has to be stark. There's a very stark dividing line. But even her outlook is she sees a couple, I'll say this, there's a couple, she's out in the marketplace with her adopted, orphans, and they see a couple who are just showing some affection in public. I know, it's a different day and age, but still, and I'm looking at this with modern eyes, and maybe that's my just judgment of some of the way things people used to look at, because we do have a very puritanical kind of view we come from a very puritanical background in this country. There's a lot of that still around. But they're just showing some basic affection, nothing scandalous that I would consider scandalous. And she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna end up taking care of their kid one of these days." And it's like, wow, for being the good person, that's a remarkably cynical thing to say, and it's a very hopeless thing to say.
So I'm going to agree with you. I would have liked it to be different too. Like I would have liked her character to be more of the good. I think the issue with that is because of the genre of the film. You always get that bleak type of society. It's that film because it's film noir. It's classified as noir. And because of that, you do get that kind of bleakness. Everyone's got baggage. I mean, it even makes a hint of it as well. In fact, I'll be honest with you. There was at one point she makes a mention of her son and how her son went away and she lost her son's love and everything. You don't really get what happened, but she's making up for whatever happened. I'm not kidding you. I thought, okay, this is clearly going to be her son. like I'm sitting there going, this is definitely going to be like this. Harry Powell is going to be her son somehow. That it wasn't the case, that's also fine. But I kind of thought maybe that'd be a twist that they would put on there.
It could have been interesting.
And I would be honest with you, I bet that in the writer's room somewhere, that was the thought.
It would be interesting just to have the creator's brain sometimes, just like what other ideas could you have gone with and what did you consider but tossed out? I will say this. There's one other thing I want to mention. My other favorite thing about the movie, despite the flaws with the we call her governess. What do you call someone who's in charge of an orphanage? What do you call them?
I know you're calling her an orphanage, and I understand. I'm not sure it was an orphanage though. That's a wild thing to say. She's very much just like, all right, you're here now.
Yeah, it's very, very informal process. Like, I'll take that one. Yeah, I'll take that one. And that kind of goes with the allegorical stuff. And if you're saying she's the angelic one and gathering, like gathering the flock, right? And the portrayal it has some flaws, like I said, I mentioned. But the one thing that I loved about her is that, when she faces down, Powell's character, she faces him down. She does it unambiguously, where up until that point, people have been fawning over this guy left and right, and she's the only one who can see through it.
this is going to sound like a wild take for me, but when this film opened, you know what I kept thinking of for some reason?
What's that?
The children. I kept thinking, I was like, this is reminding me of like, now, and I was like, very beginning of the film, everyone, very beginning of the film. But I kept thinking, I was like, this is very like Charlie Brown special.
Okay, I did not see that one coming, Ryan.
Go rewatch just the beginning of the film, and you'll probably see where I'm coming from. Because, like, I was thinking children's music, and it's like a, sort of like a hymn, or it is a hymn. And it's like, it's just their head to like
It's just
half their chest. And she's telling this biblical story.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, the movie runs through the biblical theme, like we've already made mention of.
Yeah.
You have that kind of angelic imagery there.
I'd like to see this movie remade. I think I would.
Okay, so let me give you a couple things real quick then, since you just said that. But there was a TV movie made in 1991 starring Richard Chamberlain.
Oh boy.
You know who that is?
I do.
It's I am, full disclosure, everyone, I'm reading Wikipedia right now because I was looking up some stuff, and it's just kind of easier to do it that way. In 2020, it was reported that Universal Pictures is working on a remake of the film set in present day and being written by Matt Orton. I don't really know who Matt Orton is, but present day, I could see this movie in a present day.
Yeah.
Although
you have to change I think
I will say I like. I could see it being made in the present day with some of the things going on in our world right now. I do like the backdrop of the Depression affecting this movie in many ways. And, we're not living in a depression right now. I'm not saying it's not good out there. And the Depression, it does kind of have like this almost hopelessness to it.
Yeah.
And everything. And it's like, it's one of the things that destroys. I mean, like, this is actually technically, supposedly, because of what I've been reading, is one of the more popular or best films of all time. But it has had its share of like people going through it and going, we love it, and it becomes more of a cult film, and then it just kind of rides the waves of of things like that.
I would like to see a version of this remade. I think because I would replace certain elements. I think you could, because some of the things that bother me the most, I think, from the story are also a cultural part of our history. For example, I mean, the way that the woman is, the angelic woman, if she's the voice of an angel, if she's supposed to be the angel in this story, basically, it presents that angelic or heavenly voice as being one of very harshness, because the very first thing she does is she basically sees the kids. They don't answer her as quickly because they've been scarred, maybe.
Yeah.
But when she takes that as impudence and starts to get a switch out and starts to whip them up to the house so she can bathe them, which, like, yes, take them up to your house, and yes, go ahead and bathe them, clean them up, and give them food. But this whole presentation is like that was part of the thing. Is that very harsh. That's a cultural thing. I think you could change that to. As we correct for certain things within our faith that we pulled things onto our faith over time that were cultural, that can be shed, and I think that could be one of them. I do think you hit on something else though, and that's they had the Depression, and that kind of sets this very bleak background. I think that you could replace that with a culture that is very much that's not in a depression, but is very kind of self-absorbed culture, one that's kind of just oblivious to anything outside of their own personal bubble. We live in a society of abundance, right? And yet we kind of act like, something is still wrong. And there's still plenty of stuff that's wrong, but we have all this abundance right now. We are nowhere near in a physical depression where where our very scarcity is sapping our lives. What it is more of like what we're doing to ourselves. And I think so. If you take that kind of backdrop, I think that could be a real interesting way to take it. And you could take Robert Powell's character and just give like a mega church guy, take one of the prosperity gospel people. I mean, he practically sounds like he's a prosperity gospel preacher.
So one of the things I'm not like a fan of this movie on is I felt like it did kind of wrap itself up a little bit too quickly and everything. And it's like, I would have liked to see a little bit more in terms of, that descent into, this guy had played us for a fiddle. And now we are leading it is quite literally a lynch mob, but we're leading a lynch mob to to come and nab him. And it was just like, in the way that, the way it was happening in that particular city that it was happening in, it was like right around Christmas time. The lady that was have the kids, all she was trying to do was get them away from that and everything. And at one point, if you're not paying enough attention, you can almost think at times that they're actually after the kids for some reason. So, it was a little bit jumbled up.
Yeah,
and
it was.
I wasn't a super fan of that part. Like I said, I think that could have been like expanded upon, because this movie is an hour and 33 minutes.
It's not long.
There's
it's not
a
long
book.
Film.
Yeah. So more character work would have been nice. A little bit longer of a film would have been nice. I hope if they do decide to go through with remaking it, we get that character work. We get more of that. You can make this a horror movie, but it needs to stay a thriller. I like the idea. Like I've already said, there's some fantasy elements to this, but the fantasy elements are like an undertone. And by that, I mean, like, you could say, hey, this is who this person is. But I like the realism of the movie at the end of the day. So I wouldn't want it to be like, oh, this guy's actually a demon. If I'm going to expand on this movie, I want to see maybe what made him the way that he is. Things like that.
Let's talk about verdicts, because I think for me, like you said, I'd like to see a better version of this. If you cut out some of the aspects that are more cultural and some of the negative cultural aspects from the time period that kind of wove themselves in, kind of under the radar, like having him have this siren call pretty much towards women only. Men are tempted to sin too, okay? And he can perform different acts of temptation for different people. But the way that he was presented almost as this very kind of magical power over women, where even against all reason, there's like the one girl that keeps coming back to him is like, stop it. He's creepy. He hasn't done anything to endear himself to you. Stop it. What is the matter with you? And it becomes kind of a disturbing trend. So you can take that stuff out. Unfortunately, I can't do that with this film. It's going to be something those things drove me absolutely bonkers, despite the good elements. I'm not going to say it's all the way at the bottom of the barrel for me, but it is a bad dates film. I just don't see myself ever getting more out of it than I've gotten already. It's a sad thing to say, because I do love those certain parts. I just can't let myself be driven nuts that much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But how about you?
So there's only one reason why I'm not going to say Fortune and Glory. So I'm going to say Trust Me when I talk about this film. But the only reason why I'm not going to say Fortune and Glory is because I'm very sympathetic to certain aspects of this film that might take their toll on someone. So you just don't want to watch it over and over again. But like having a copy of it or being able to pull it out every now and then would be good. But I do think you should watch this film. I do think it's a really good film. This film does a really good job, especially in the 50s when you're not talking about it as much. But it does a really good job of showing showing the mental health. And by mental health, I'm not talking about good or bad. I'm just talking about mental health. You get to see, like Justin's already made mention, you get to see John's mother slowly be destroyed through psychological abuse. To the point where she's almost this is spoiler territory, but to a point where she's almost in she's very much in a catatonic state.
Yeah.
And he can just end her right there.
And she doesn't flinch. Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't flinch. In fact, she's almost welcoming it in a way.
Like it's some kind of release for her. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like it does a really good job of just like, of painting the picture of mental health, how it can look bad, and how it can be almost destroyed. So I understand people might have a hard time watching that over and over again. So that's why I just say, trust me, watch it, understand that there might be some things about this movie that, gets to you, triggers you, if that's the word you want to use. But I do think it's a film to watch because, it's a good story. I do think there's some things I'd like to change. It's not perfect by any stretch, but it's a good story. So trust me, that's my verdict.
Awesome, dude. Well, that's our take on Night of the Hunter. So next week, we're doing something very different for us. Tell us what that is, Ryan.
For all of you Final Fantasy fans out there, there is a character in the Final Fantasy that is, I don't know if he's actually based off of the character in this movie or if it's just a word that has just been used, but I hope I'm not going to butcher the name. But we are watching a foreign film titled is it Yojimbo?
It's Yojimbo. Yeah.
Yojimbo.
Means bodyguard.
Yojimbo, the bodyguard, the samurai bodyguard. And I think that's what it is.
Even if that isn't another cultural reference directly tied to the film, there's one a lot more closely tied to it, and that is the spaghetti western A Fistful of Dollars. Fistful of Dollars is an American remake of Yojimbo. And it actually got tied up in the U.S. in its distribution because there were some copyright issues. I don't know the details of that, but that's the brief part of it. Again, it's Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
I have not seen A Fistful of Dollars, but I do know The Man with No Name. I have seen like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's the same basic character. So we'll talk about that all next week. As always, folks, come and join us and watch the films with us. We want to have you on board with us. We want you to watch the films with us. It's a ride we all take together. Anything else you want to say, Ryan?
Enjoy these films, no matter what we say about them. Go and watch them.
Take a ride, and good or bad, you know that you won't be going on it alone. Okay?
And it's all for free. Well, at least most everything's for free on Tubi. So.
Yes. So until next week, we'll see you next time.
See you next time.